This country is getting divided in two: people who have property and people who don't have property. The truth is, this has been happening for a long time. It's been happening in slow motion. Take a look at this. It's the graph of the price of a house to household income. What this graph shows shouldn't be a surprise to anyone living in this country. What the graph doesn't show is the effect rising house prices are now having on Australians that are earning below average income. It makes it impossible for a lot of people to afford a home. This is not something we would have voted for back in 1988 when this graph started. If you've watched this channel before, you know that my opinion is the everything crisis world we live in is going to keep continuing. In this video, I'm going to talk about what it looks like if the housing gap gets bigger. What happens when this housing problem that's dividing the country by two keeps on driving a wedge between property owners and renters? My name is Will Bell. I'm a mortgage broker. I've been running my business here in Melbourne for 13 years. In that time, I've had front row seats to the property market and the nightmare that it's turned into for a growing amount of Australians. That's causing massive amounts of pain at an individual level, but also a societal level. It's getting harder and harder for people to provide for their families. The reason I do these videos is to say what I think is right. The truth, as I see it, is that property owners can't keep getting wealthier at the expense of people who don't own property. I want to give a shout out to the other YouTubers that are creating content on this as well. There's a lot of different sides to this issue, and everyone brings different perspectives which we should all value, even if we don't agree sometimes. How did we get here? It's important to understand these factors because it will prove things are not going to change. Number one, dual incomes. This allowed people to go for that better home and pay that extra money. Number two, reducing interest rates. Until recently, interest rates have been coming down for most of that time, reducing stress and increasing borrowing power. First home buyer grant schemes and concessions, literally making things possible for a large portion of first home buyers over the last 20 or so years. Number four, negative gearing. This has been gone over time and time again, and you could probably throw a fifth one in there of immigration as well. Apart from the first one, all of these contributing factors have been at the control of state and federal governments. Now, you might say that interest rates are controlled by the central bank, and you might be right there, and that is true. However, rules can be enforced upon the banking system to create change. For example, in around 2016, interest rates on investor loans increased, and you could only roll over interest-only loans after an assessment. Prior to that, there was no assessment required, which basically meant that you could have an interest-only loan forever. These things were brought in to slow down investor lending. Understanding that these issues are in control of our leaders by the policy that they set is important. It's important especially around proposed housing reforms. The reason this is important is because these things are contributing to the problem.
And the government has won the Greens' support to finally pass its $10 billion Housing Australia Future Fund through the Parliament.
Under Labor's affordable housing policy, they want to build 30,000 affordable homes with $10 billion in the next 5 years. Firstly, cost-wise, that's not going to happen because $10 billion isn't enough to build 30,000 homes. Secondly, builders are going bankrupt left, right and centre, so I don't know where they're going to find these builders to build all these houses unless they pay a lot more. They also have the proposed Help to Buy to Fix Things, a scheme where the government can pitch in up to 40% to make things more affordable for home buyers. Then you look at the Libs and they want to bring in Super for Housing, a policy which accesses your retirement savings to help you buy a house. None of this fixes the actual problems, and this is the thing. Things are going to get worse because even if good policy was implemented today, it won't be, but even if it was today, it would take years to turn things around. Here in Melbourne, the average first home buyer is 35 years old, which is a lot older than it used to be. On top of this, we have 30-year loans, which is longer than what they used to be as well. Many of these people are trying to figure out how they get by in the short term, but it seems like most of Australia is totally blind to the longer term. In the short term, it's the same things. It's debt, repayments, it's electricity, food, petrol, it's insurance, all of that stuff. It's the cost of living in general that keeps a lot of Australians up at night. Peeking out your curtains every day because you're worried the sheriff is going to come and take all your belongings because you're late on bills is a terrible thing to contemplate, but it's a reality for a growing amount of people. The long term, however, is not much better. Those 35-year-old first home buyers are going to be 65 by the time their debt is repaid. This isn't what we signed up for, and yet highly positioned stakeholders are touting solutions like 50-year home loans to fix housing affordability. By the way, if you want to pay your home loan off faster, I'm creating a debt repayment program which is focused on helping people get rid of their debt faster. It's nearly complete, but first I need some more people to work with to iron some things out. The feedback so far has been really great, especially amongst normal people that are just focused on living their own life. For most people, it should be realistic to turn a 30-year home loan into a 20-year home loan. Anyway, you can find out my details below and contact me if you're interested about that. So where does this all go next? This is my opinion, so feel free to take me to task in the comments here, guys. Society needs to give individuals the incentive and opportunity to live the life they want. Let's briefly go over some more specific examples of that. People want to live in their own home. They want to have a family and retire at a reasonable age. People want to feel safe in the community they live in. They want to have affordable expenses for all of the necessities, things like education, food and healthcare. They want the opportunity to work and to have all of the above. All of the stuff I just mentioned has been getting harder over a long period of time. Put yourself in the shoes of the average 30-year-old right now. The average 30-year-old has had this message driven into them that they can't afford to buy a home. This housing affordability problem has also really ramped up in the recent years, say the last 5 years or so. These people are asking how they're going to provide security for their future families if they're at the whim of a landlord their entire life. People are checking out. People are giving up on these dreams of owning their own home. I've also noticed more anger in general. Agree or disagree with this in the comments, guys. The first time I saw this was in 2019 when ScoMo went to that town after the bushfire tore through it. I think that might have been the one where he was on holidays. Anyway, he went to this town and the locals were really angry and they were hating him. It was more than just the devastation of the bushfire. I remember thinking at the time that something else was going on here. I could have totally read that wrong, but it's hard to deny that we got more angry between then and now. There's also a lot more mental illness going on. I'm no expert here, but there's probably a whole myriad of interrelated reasons for this, but I'd be willing to bet that people not believing like they've got a fair chance is a contributing factor to at least a small portion of this. Right now we have more and more people with less incentive to work. More of these people are angry with mental health degrading at the same time. And the thing is, we don't have solutions. One could argue that our solutions are contributing to the problems. What's clear to me is the divide between the rich and the poor is going to become larger. People with property that can afford to service their debt are going to become wealthier. The rest run the risk of getting left behind. The negative trends we currently see, like the mental health, the crime rates in certain areas, and homelessness are going to affect the people that get left behind more. Part of my heritage is a place where generational poverty exists. Australia's been such a great place because you could grow up in humble beginnings but still have access to the same things that everyone else wants. A place to call your own, a safe family, food on the table, the basics. My fear is that if you are born poor, you'll have no chance to get those things everyone deserves. You will remain impoverished and be a part of a cycle of generational poverty. And that's not fair. I want to hear your comments below, guys, because it drives me crazy that in a country where we have so many resources, we can be having the problems that we're having today. Thanks for watching. Cheers.